Hi, I'm Emily Agnew at Luminous Listening, and this video is a follow-up on a series of articles I've been doing about setting clean boundaries, and the most recent one was called Is Love a Feeling or a Need? Why Your Answer Matters. And it had to do with when you see love as a need rather than as a feeling, then you start to ask better questions like, what meets my need for love? What meets your need for love? Am I willing to meet, your need for love? Are you willing to meet mine? It's a much more practical approach because it's very individual what meets each of our needs for love. So I help clients in the work I do three things, especially sensitive clients, do three things that they need to be happy. One is build a personal infrastructure. One is develop a really good inner relationship. And one is develop a strong connection to their inner spiritual source. Now, today's subject, which is 3 blocks to asking for what you need and how to overcome them, falls in the inner relationship category, and it also kind of overlaps with the spiritual area. It's really about your inner relationship. So there's one mother block to asking for what you need. It's like the mother of all the other blocks. So let's look at that first, and then we'll look at the 3 obstacles that mother of all blocks throws between you and asking for what you need. And then we'll look at how to overcome those 3 obstacles. So the mother block is something I call the universal human mistake. So what is that? It seems really obvious once you get it, but it took me years to figure this out. It kind of challenged my self-image as a semi-intelligent person along the way. And it caused me a lot of suffering. And many people I've shared this with, it's been a big eureka. So listen up, especially if you're built sensitive. The universal human mistake is our tendency to assume that others think, react, and respond the way we do. I'll just say that again. The universal human mistake is our tendency to assume that other people think, react, and respond the same way we do or that we would in a given situation. So what does that mean? Let's say that for you, having someone raise their voice at you in a conflict is extremely stressful, and your HSP system gets totally overstimulated and over-aroused. And then you combine this with another HSP attribute, which is we tend to process things. We think about them a lot. And that means you've probably thought through, well, how would I feel if someone were, or how would they feel if I were yelling at them the way they're yelling at me? So you already probably are acting on having thought through that by not yelling at people. And you refrain from doing that even when you're upset, but they don't. And then, making the universal human mistake, you assume that they too find it horribly unpleasant to be yelled at. And then you take a step deeper into the pit of that mistake and you say to yourself, oh, wow, they know how awful it is to be yelled at, and they're still yelling at me. And then you're left with a kind of terrible set of conclusions, either that they're hideously clueless or deliberately malicious. And if you're like me, that kind of conclusion just makes it even harder to actually address the problem directly with the person, because it's pretty daunting to think of bringing up with someone that you're wondering, are you either clueless or are you evil? So the universal human mistake is tricky territory for everybody in relationship, for us as human beings, and especially for highly sensitive people, since we're built different from the other 80%. And all of us human beings share the same universal human needs, but our strategies for meeting them, like what makes us happy, what meets our need for love, it can be really, really different. So, and of course, this is true with other HSPs too. I mean, to give you an example of the universal human mistake at play in a 2 HSP relationship, my partner is an HSP, and I have the most sensitive nose east of the Mississippi. literally, this is true. I can be upstairs in my office, and if my partner comes home from the gym and I just open the door, maybe give it 30 seconds for the air to move, but open the door, I can smell the soap he used at the gym. I have really strong smelling soap at his gym. And this can be handy if I leave a pot on the stove and I'll forget about it and it burns. I'll be the first one who smells it. But, my partner can't smell things very well at all. I think he got bashed in the nose with a hockey stick when he was a kid or something, and it was never the same. But so we had over a period of years the great deodorant wars with intermittent battles where he'd go and buy a new scent of men and deodorant because it was on sale or something, and he'd wear it for the first time, and I'd be like, overwhelmed by the smell. It was like this third entity kind of going around the house, following him around, and he couldn't believe that A, I could smell the difference, and B, that it could possibly be bothering me. So this is a great example of the universal human mistake, which we did eventually work out by talking about it, and also by me moving through a couple of some of the sub blocks that we're going to look at in a minute, because part of the reason we were caught was that I felt like he should understand, right? And he thought that I shouldn't be bothered. So we were both caught in should land. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. But really, in the end, the universal human mistake comes down to a spiritual issue, because it's about compassion and trust and openness, and openness to learn. If you're an inner bonder, that's the second step, is moving into the intent to learn, right after being willing to feel your feelings. Without that, because we're all really different, and it can be really, really hard to understand why other people do the things they do, and we're all unique. But so the universal human mistake is the mother of all blocks, but she has 3 kids, 3 baby blocks, so that really trip people up. And I pondered this quite a bit, so I want to share this with you. Let's look at them and how to overcome them. So the first one is that you don't see or acknowledge your needs. Period. You just, in certain areas, probably. Most of us are, we can recognize if we're hungry, although even that, basic stuff. But there may be important needs that you just ignore or dismiss. This is very common for HSPs in the dominant culture, because we have different needs than the other 80% about a lot of things. So you may not even think to ask yourself, do I want to watch this violent movie? I certainly didn't. I used to have a semi, if not totally, sleepless night after watching Alien or whatever. Nightmares sometimes for days after watching a violent movie. And it wasn't until I was pregnant with my daughter that I really noticed how awful I felt, during scary or violent movies, and finally asked myself, do I really want to be bathing this baby with all whatever hormones are involved with all this fear and tension? So do you see, this is sad. It's really common that I had not even thought to ask that. I never thought to ask, do I want to be bathing myself in all that fear stuff? Am I having fun? I thought I was supposed to be having fun. But when I was really honest with myself, I wasn't having fun. So this is the first block you have to overcome to be able to ask, for your needs to be met. You have to be at a point where you're willing to acknowledge they exist. And that means acknowledging the feelings and reactions that are actually coming up in you, and taking responsibility for them. So for me, this is an ongoing project. I have to be a detective. Oh, for example, if I need alone time and I'm not taking it for myself, I start getting this kind of cranky, critical thing going. And that's my telltale sign, I've learned. If I start feeling critical of my partner especially, and cranky, it means there's something I'm needing that I'm not acknowledging to myself. Like we'll be sitting eating at dinner and I'll notice that his chewing is bugging me, or that he has set the knife and fork backwards, and how could he do that? And I just want to say, I totally get the humor of that. really, really grateful that I have a partner who sets the table and he cooks and he vacuums. He's awesome, and I don't take that for granted. It's kind of endearing usually that he sets the fork, and he's dyslexic when it comes to table setting. But when it irritates me, I know that there's something, and usually it's alone time. It's that there's some project I really want to get to, that because we both enjoy snuggling and watching Netflix after dinner. I just keep going, oh, well, I'll do it another time, but I'm not recognizing the need and taking responsibility for it. And here's an important principle that you can see operating in my story. If I or you don't take responsibility for these kind of needs from a loving adult place, then a less savory, wounded part of me will take over and essentially go about picking a fight with my partner, which creates the alone time if that's what I was needing, but at quite a price. So your permanent assignment, homework as an HSP, is to be a bloodhound for your own precious needs so that you can really notice them and acknowledge them, and then you can act on them. Otherwise, nobody can possibly help you with them if you don't even know what they are. So let's look at the second block. Let's say you've been doing your homework and you're starting to realize I have needs and my needs matter, which is good. And now there's another trap that people really commonly fall in, especially HSPs, because sometimes if our needs were different, like say than our family members, and we may have just grown up thinking there's kind of something a little bit wrong with us for having our needs. So we're still kind of a little defensive about them or apologetic. We're looking for approval and validation for them. This is a tricky business because if it doesn't go well, if you approach someone else wanting help getting a need met, but you're doing it from a place of, am I really worthy to have this need? And they don't respond well, then you can feel really crushed or really resentful. You end up shaming or blaming yourself for the other person. I had this challenge planning trips with my partner. When he travels, he likes to pack in as many places as he possibly can and to be constantly on the move. And we did that on our first trip. We went to Turkey with my daughter, and we changed hotels every night, and we packed in so much stuff. By the end of the first 5 days or so, we were all ready to kill each other, and I was just exhausted. And I really resented him for it too. I felt like, it was his fault. I didn't realize that I really wasn't, even in the planning of the trip, I had not acknowledged my own needs. So I did after the fact. And the next time we went on a trip, we took my daughter to Italy, and we stayed in one place for several nights at a time and did day trips from there. And it worked out so much better. And he could go out on his own. We stayed in places where you could walk, so if we had different needs, we could separate. Like in Rome, we got up that morning at 4 a.m. and took a train and tore all over the place and did all the stuff. And by 4 o'clock, I was dropping, like I was about to drop dead. And so we went to our hotel, and my daughter and I took a nap, and he went out and saw 4 churches. And it was great because he loves seeing sacred spaces, so he got to do that. And as far as I was concerned, the bed was a sacred space to me for those 2 hours. It was like the best nap I've ever had. And then I was totally restored for the evening. So that's an example of, after the fact, figuring out that I had kind of been looking to him. I had tentatively mentioned things before Turkey about wanting to, have a little bit easier pace because I sensed it was going to be a lot, but I didn't really trust myself. I didn't have the strength of my convictions, and I was kind of looking for him to validate it. So the antidote there is to really check in with yourself, really trust if you have feelings of misgivings or something, that squeaky door feeling about a plan that's being made. And also, when you go to ask someone else for help getting some need met, really ask yourself, what energy am I asking from? If you're asking someone for something you need and you're looking for validation in their response, it's built-in trouble because you can't control other people, right? And then you're putting whether your needs get met or not at their mercy. So that brings us to the third block, the third child of the universal human mistake. This is a really common one in relationships, that we expect others to know and understand our needs, and we feel really hurt when they don't. You can see how the universal human mistake plays into that. Like, well, if you loved me, how could you not know that I blah blah blah? So this is a challenge in any relationship. But you need to be willing and able to let others know what your needs are, not to assume that they know. And to be successful, as we just looked at, you do need to do it from a place of worthiness, that your needs have worth, so that whatever their reaction to you asking for help, you don't question that you have a right to have needs, and that you deserve to have needs. We all do. And it's also fine to want to get them met however you want to get them met. So because we can't control other people, right, you also need to have a plan B. And valuing your own needs means that you take responsibility for finding a way to meet them. Even if, say, if person A, like often it's your partner, is the person you would really like to be the one to meet a need, but they aren't willing or able, you need to have a plan B in place so you won't feel resentful of them or try to control them. This overlaps with some of the boundary stuff I've been writing and talking about over the last couple months. A client and I were talking the other day about this kind of situation. Like in this case, how she might set some boundaries with a boss who had raised his voice with her at work. And she was trying to reimagine the situation, like what might she have said, instead of just like letting him yell and then escaping and resenting him. So she imagined asking him, "Why would you talk to me that way?" Can you hear the universal mistake in there? Why would you talk to me that way? It's like, how could you? I would never speak to anyone that way. How could you speak? She's not really advocating for her need. It's more in a place of, do I really deserve, like, did I do something that I deserved to have you talk to me that way? Do you feel that? We can, especially as HSPs, we really, because for many of us, our go-to strategy with conflict when we're growing up is to kind of blame ourselves, because we think about things so much. And so if stuff happens that we just can't make sense of, we figure, oh, well, it must be something I did. And then we try and figure out how to do better next time. So instead of asking, why, to value her needs, she needs to remember that she has a right for choice around the volume and the energy of her interactions with others. Okay, right? So that's our first two blocks, is seeing that need and acknowledging it as legitimate. And then, also she's going to have to let her boss know what she needs and what she'll do to take care of those needs. So, the next time he starts to yell, she might say, I really want to discuss this issue with you, and I'd be happy to do it if you can talk to me at the volume level I'm using with you right now. So she's being kind of specific, letting him know what she means by not yelling, because people's definition of what yelling means really varies. So, and then she could add, otherwise, I'll just head back to my office and we can try again later. So that's the boundary, right? That's her saying, well, that's her plan B. That's her saying, I'd really like to talk to you about this. We need to. I really can't do it at this volume level. So, I'll do it with you later when you've calmed down if you like, but I'm going to physically remove myself if you can't lower your volume. So that's an example of her having a plan B. And maybe your boss grew up in a big family where everyone yelled all the time, and he has no idea how it bothers and overwhelms other people. And so just letting him know might solve the problem. He might say, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. But he might also just not care. Sometimes people don't, whatever his reasons are. And it's way, way easier in that situation not to take that personally and not to get caught up feeling like you're a helpless victim if you have a plan B. Okay, so there's the universal human mistake and 3 children of the universal human mistake. Let me know if this is helpful. And if this is helpful, check out the other articles from recent weeks. Articles and videos are all it's all a package deal. It all overlaps. And I hope this helps you be more effective in asking for what you need, knowing what you need, and asking for what you need. The other videos and articles are on my website at www.luminoselistening.com. Thanks for listening and have a great day.